Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back to another episode of Justice for All Now. I'm your host, Hannah Zubairi, and you're watching us on Muslim Network TV. You can watch Muslim Network TV 24/7 on Galaxy 19 satellite, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV. Today, I wanted to talk to you about the Dallas Muslim community in Dallas. This is a community that is really developed, has prospered, has a rather large Muslim community, and often is in the news for the anti-Muslim bigoted attacks against its institutions, against the leadership there, as well as today we're going to be discussing what is a vile letter that has been circulated in the community that has really thrown the community in for a loop and has shocked them. So to discuss this and much more of what the history of Dallas community, especially as they face Islamophobia, face anti-Muslim bigotry, what has transpired, how it's developed, how their fight for justice has developed in the past couple of years. And for that, today, my guest is Faizan Sayed. Faizan, thank you so much for being here today. Faizan is the Executive Director of CARE, which is the Council on American Relations, American Islamic Relations in Dallas. And you've been the Executive Director for a while. You were previously based out of St. Louis, right?
That's right.
Yes. So, so I'm sure Dallas has put you to work right away, because this is something, as we've seen, this is a community that has faced armed protests at their mosques. They faced Pamela Geller. They faced doxing of Muslim homes. So you're coming in so let's share with me how the work has transpired ever since you've landed in Dallas, what the struggles you've been facing. Would love to hear from it.
First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be on the show and talk about this extremely important issue of being in Dallas and being Muslim in Dallas. One thing we understand and we have to realize is that Dallas is a very large Muslim community. Every year we have more Muslims from across the United States coming and calling Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth their home. At the same time, we have this parallel set of really ugly Islamophobic incidents and examples of hatred that are happening within our communities. In fact, Dallas, Fort Worth, specifically Irving and Dallas, is an area that's had more armed protests come in front of our Islamic centers to protest these centers. We've even had, for example, when issues came up at the Irving community and the Irving city, that Muslims would come up and speak out against it, and that the mayor at that time actually went and released all the names and addresses of the people who came and spoke at that city hall meeting. We live in a community where, though there's a ton of halal restaurants, amazing Islamic centers, and great work being done, we also see a rise in ugly anti-Muslim bigotry and hysteria. And for example, for me, being somebody who transplanted to Dallas, originally I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, where I was the executive director there for almost 8-9 years. And to go from that to being the director of just Dallas Fort Worth is like night and day. There, I would receive one case of a civil rights complaint, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. Here, it really is every 2-3 days. We're receiving one case after another of very serious attacks against our community, discrimination at work, bullying in school, and things of that nature. In fact, today we did a press conference about this really ugly letter that was released and sent to members of the Indian and Chinese American communities here in Dallas, Fort Worth. And that was today. And we had great speakers come. Tomorrow, if you watch the news, you're going to probably see us in the news again for another issue of Islamophobia that's happening as well. So the reality is that we have to continue our struggle and our fight for justice, because as a community, we are American, we are proud to be American, and we are proud to give back to our country. And we are not going to let hate or discrimination prevent us from living our faith and our values in this country.
So let's talk about this letter that was sent. A lot of us saw it on a popular Islamic scholar's Instagram handle and his Twitter page. Sheikh Omar Suleiman shared it, and obviously that got a lot of traction nationwide. that something so ugly and so egregious would be sent. And obviously there's, a lot of questions on who sent it, why was it sent, how many people received it. So if you could help answer some of those questions, that would be really great.
Of course. So this letter really started circulating this past weekend on Sunday particularly, and that the law enforcement actually sent out a community alert for anybody who receives this letter to immediately contact law enforcement. Our office, along with others in our community, we've been receiving a lot of calls from concerned members of the community who are worried about what this letter means. Is it safe to go in the community? Is it safe to go to public parks or go to pools? And of course, we always say, yes, it's always safe to go out and never allow hate and fear to change the way you live your lives. With that said, we're still right now, our office is looking to verify folks who have called us and said that they know somebody or they've heard of somebody who received this letter, and we're continuing that process, and this is an ongoing story. One caveat I'll mention though is that this letter specifically, whenever there's an incident like this targeting somebody based on their race, religion, ethnicity, it not only impacts the person who received these letters, but impacts everybody part of that community. So the majority of people, of course, have not received these letters, and we don't know the scope that's been sent out, but that's really not the point, because this has already created that atmosphere of fear within Dallas-Fort Worth, of suspicion, and really people are taking it very seriously. So it's our goal when we held a press conference to invite interfaith speakers, to invite people of other civil rights groups, to stand with the community, to say that you're loved, that you're respected, that you're welcome in Dallas, and to not allow this narrative of hate and closed-minded bigotry, prevent that from happening. So this is something that we want to make sure everybody in our community trust in Allah, turn to Allah. He is the one that protects us, and to not let any threat of violence prevent you from living your lives.
And this is really, really important for us to, especially in this time, to remind the community that as elections come, the spike of hate attacks, the spike in hate crimes will increase. Like this is normal, natural. I believe ISBU has done research on this where during elections this will happen. So how are you getting your community ready for this, especially in the context of what has happened to Dallas in the past? And especially under a Trump presidency, where just this week he has essentially said that the young man in Kiniso was right in, he was attacked, and he sort of defended this murderer. So and gun culture is also another part of Dallas culture. It's an open carry state. I know I have friends there who talk about this often. When that law went into effect, that really affected them too. For those, especially who come from a non-open carry state and come and settle in Texas or settle in Dallas, that's something that just you're just like, whoa, not used to that. So how are you educating your community on that?
This is a strategy as old as time. Mm-hmm. People who are in political office who don't know how to fix the real problems of society, the economic problems, daycare problems, health issues, so on and so forth, they will resort to scapegoating other communities, whether they're Latinos, whether they're African American, whether they're Muslims, or whoever it is, as a way to use divisive rhetoric in order for them to win power, in order for them to win elections. This is something that's being done in America, it's being done in India, and it's being done all around the world, as we see democratic institutions really not being able to challenge the rise of far-right nationalists, of these really fascist organizations that are happening in America and across the country. Mm-hmm. That's why at CARE, our main duty is to defend the community. We're here to be the shield of the community, to make sure that when people are targeted, that they are represented in court, that their rights are being defended. But at the same time, suing people is not enough. American Muslims and Muslims all across the world, we need to get active and we need to get involved. We have to educate people about our faith. We have to vote, and we have to participate in the country that we live in. It is not enough to just live in America, worry about yourself, your job, and your career, and forget everything else. Because whether we like it or not, our faith has become politicized in America. Whether you are into politics, whether your masjid is politics or not, it does not matter. Your faith has become politicized, and because of that, it is being used by people to demonize you in order to spread fear and to win election and votes. And we need to stand against that accordingly. I really urge the Muslim population who are watching this video that remember the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, remember the struggles of the prophets. All of them lived in their communities and they interacted in their communities, and we have to do the same.
One of the things, so can you share with us what has been the response of interfaith leadership in that area, folks that have been allies? What is their response to this incident?
I'm very happy that in Dallas and along with the rest of the country, our interfaith connections, the various organizations that we work with and we partner with, have been very, very supportive of our community, are always there to be on the front lines to make sure that their voices are heard, to say that this is not something that's going to be done in their name or in their faith tradition's name. And they're always there to show that solidarity and support. We're also happy that there's a rich history of civil rights organizations coming up and standing not only for the Muslim community, but for the right of all people. And I think this solidarity is something that needs to be built upon. One of the challenges that we face in America is that as a Muslim ummah, we're really used to there are the leaders, there are the sheikhs, there are the ulama who kind of build these relationships, and we don't do anything. And this is the complete wrong approach. Every single person that's watching this video, you are responsible for building relationships with your neighbors, with your community, and you are responsible for making sure that when these incidents come up, that you have people in your neighborhood that are willing to speak out and stand up for you. And this is something that's really often overlooked. I know right now that I moved to Dallas, I'm already reaching out to all the churches, synagogues, Hindu temples, Sikh temples that are around my neighborhood where I live, not because I'm the executive director of CARE, but because I'm a Muslim who lives in America and I care about our community. And the best way to care about our community is to know these people. Mm-hmm. If you live in a neighborhood and you don't know your neighbors and you don't know like the faith allies in your community, then you don't actually live there. You might physically live there, but you are a visitor. You're always going to think of yourself as a visitor, and when issues come up, you're not going to have any help or support. And again, this goes against our tradition, and this is something that we really need to revitalize in our communities.
So that is one of the struggles, right, in Dallas, that there have been these Muslim bubbles because there are so many masajid there, there's so many scholars, and people have sort of like retreated and made, mashallah, there's like neighborhoods of Muslims. And that is a struggle, is to get people more in touch with and get out of that Muslim bubble. But I would, and I have seen, just sitting here from a national perspective, a move and a shift in the Dallas community, especially since the time when Pamela Geller came in and they mocked Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and local Muslims were encouraged at that time to ignore her, and they did. And then she had the cartoon contest there. And then like two men, like the whole thing happened with the two men who attacked with rifles, and they drove in from Arizona. So the community has gone through like these issues in the past. But at that time, this raise in anti-Islam sentiment, it comes from the state capital, it comes from local government. I remember the time when the city council had endorsed a bill to forbid judges from ruling based on quote unquote foreign laws. So now, for example, divorce laws were affected, inheritance laws, things like that, and really no law can override the Constitution of the United States, obviously, but that whole Sharia law, like scaremongering tactics, all of those have occurred. Can you talk about specifically how some of the positive changes in the community in the past couple of years, what you may have heard and seen, number one, and then I want to talk a little bit about where do we go, like what more can be done in the Dallas community at a grassroots level?
Now, that's a really great question. You're right. We've had a lot of really high profile nationwide Islamophobic incident that happened here in Dallas. And one of the things we have to understand about these is that our community is, yes, we have a lot of challenges in Dallas, but also I see a shift in the community when it comes to Muslims understanding that they have to get involved, that they have to vote, that they have to participate. That understanding is completely different now than it was even the 2000s, especially in the 90s, right? And the thing is, every generation, I think, will understand the reality and the urgency of it more and more. Because right now, you can't ignore it, right? The people who are in office, the president of the United States, your faith is actively being targeted. It's being used as a political tool in order for some people to win election and power. And you can't ignore it. I know many people are afraid and they don't want to respond, but I think the more pressure that's put on the community, the more that will rise up to that challenge. Just like in the word fitna, the more you heat up, iron and dirt, the more you're able to extract the gold from it. And I think that's what Allah is putting us through these tests and trials in America and across the world, because He really wants to see that gold standard come out. The only question that people have to ask is, are you going to be that gold standard? Are you going to be the person that uses the situation around you, understand that you need to learn more about your tradition, your faith, and how to speak and challenge oppression? Or are you going to be the person that sees all this and says, well, I'm going to take a step back? I think that's our main challenge. I know in Dallas, we have a lot more masjids who are openly encouraging people to vote. We have a lot more khatibs actually talking about modern day issues, which even a decade ago did not exist. Most khatibs and most sheikhs would always use, traditional reference or traditional stories, which are very important, but now they're connecting those to modern day stories. And this is going to be an ongoing cultural change that happens in America and across the world. One thing I'll mention is, as you mentioned but earlier, is that when the Pamela Geller event happened, a lot of the imams said ignore it. That's not my philosophy. I don't choose to ignore things. I choose to respond accordingly to these things. I think as a community, we've been told for too long to ignore situation and ignore these issues, and eventually they'll go away. Mm-hmm. It's not going away in America. It's not going away in India. It's not going away all around the world. And either you learn your faith tradition and you're able to defend it, or you're going to get trampled on, like we see happening, unfortunately, around the world.
That is, something that what you just said is that not being able to afford sitting on the sidelines anymore, right? Or ignoring. Have you seen a rise in folks running for office in the Muslim community in Dallas?
Alhamdulillah, we have seen a rise in people running for office, not only in Dallas, but really across the United States. I think the recent election, especially the rise with the progressive movement, and I only say progressive just because most of the Muslims who are running for these offices happen to be running on the platform of progressives, that they are now understand the urgency, but also they now have an opportunity to run, and they really believe that they can win. So we see people running here in Dallas, Fort Worth locally, and of course across the United States. However, even as they're running, there's a lot more work that as a community we need to do. We have to be able to support candidates, either on social media, digitally, financially, or volunteer for them. And as a community, we still don't have that culture yet of really supporting people who are running for political office. Mm-hmm. On a more nefarious note, though, there are still a growing trend of people, especially with this presidential campaign, who just feel that they have lost all hope, that they have lost enthusiasm to vote in the upcoming election, because they say things like, well, the two candidates are basically the same, and arguments like this we hear. These really cannot be further from the truth. If you don't vote as an American Muslim, that is not a form of protest, that is a form of surrender. You have been given an opportunity to express your views, to impact who's the representative, to impact laws in this country through the ballot box. And if you choose not to participate, then you can guarantee and bet that others who don't hold our values, who don't believe in what we believe in, they are going to vote, and they are going to impact your life. And this is something that we as a community continue to struggle to really grasp, but also I've seen amazing movements in that direction. Right now, there's multiple organizations trying to get Muslims out to vote, multiple organizations that are doing robocalls and phone banking to encourage the Muslim community to vote, and a lot of imams who are actively giving sermons encouraging this, which I don't think I would have even seen 4 years ago, let alone today. So I think there is progress being made, but of course that progress has to be accelerated a lot more.
So we have another guest on the show, Asif Sayed. Asif is from the Dallas community. He's connected to the IT industry, and we thank you so much, Brother Asif, for being on the show today.
My pleasure.
And So my interest in calling you is I wanted to hear the perspective of a family person in Dallas who's in this industry. What was your reaction when you first saw the letter?
Yeah, my first reaction was that this is another attempt of creating terror in the hearts of innocent civilians who are just trying to, live their normal lives. And I was pretty sad to see such language in that letter, which clearly is coming from a very hate-filled heart. That they are talking about opening fire at pools and playgrounds and stuff where kids, innocent children, they play. They have nothing to do with all of this anyway. So I was pretty sad to see, to say the least. But be rest assured that we are not the ones who get terrorized by such hate mongering, and we hope that if anything, then this is going to bring people together and perhaps seek solutions in dialogue and talks and trying to understand each other's situation rather than violence, incessant and violence like this. So I'm hoping that at least the Muslim community, at least us over here, and also our IT consultants, all our friends and family members around, are going to kind of wake up and at least make their voices heard in this coming ballot. And if not anything, I mean, they may have their own political views, but I honestly feel they must register at the ballot. They must make their votes count. They are entitled to their views, but I just feel if we just be quiet and just don't say anything, then we cannot be then complaining behind that, okay, these things are just picking up on our back, in our backyard. So I just honestly feel that this perhaps must be a wake-up call for all of us. And perhaps we must take some steps to kind of mobilize our effort, and not just to for the police department. I know that the Irving Police Department has been informed about this incident, but I'm coming from the perspective of actually reaching out to those people, whoever these people are. If they want to come out, I mean, they are part of this community. Yes, I mean, we are ready to help. We're ready to have a dialogue. We're ready to have a discussion. Not like this. This is not going to yield any good for anyone. So I mean, this has to be understood.
So now, as a person who's in the IT community, right, and this is something that's a trope that is often shared amongst, that these foreigners are coming in to get our jobs, and there's this push against workers' visas. There's this element of that Americans are being robbed of their right, and just the essence of not being seen as American, right? Like this is when people talk about Americans, then Black and brown people who are from overseas, or Asian, Asian Americans, South Asian Americans, Middle Eastern Americans, are sort of like cut out of that. American part is cut out, right? So you're now just seen through the lens of the other, the foreigner. So I would like to hear your perspective on that. How like does that play out in inside offices as well? Do you guys feel it there as well, or is it this something that is you're just seeing on through these letters?
Yeah, so quite honestly, in the workplace, there is no such thing. We believe in equal opportunity based on merit and talent, and there is a strict vetting process for hiring anybody in our workplaces. I've not heard anything to the contrary from my colleagues and friends, but definitely this sentiment, which is politically motivated, that these people coming from outside our country, coming to take our jobs, our livelihood away, that itself is deficient, I believe, because especially in IT, or for that matter, any computer-related field, I think if not anything, then these ideas that come out of technology and innovation, that yields to more jobs, that yields to more more opportunity for other people to come in and then participate in that wave. And if you've seen the last couple of decades, that's been a complete witness to this technological innovation that's coming in from imported talents, who are then, I mean, if you see even the 1/3 of the entrepreneurs or the startups that happened in Silicon Valley, that was started up by Indians. That's a statistic that we all know about. And then basically to say that these people are not coming here to take something, but they're here to contribute to the to the technological framework in order to bring something on the table and then share that innovation with the rest of the world, in as such creating more jobs for other people. So I believe that this is an uninformed and the people who are uninformed and uneducated, they take certain positions like this. They don't understand what jobs market is really about, and then who suffers in this job market versus who does not. And as in any other case, there could be some people feeling that he could have gotten the job and somebody else took the job away from me. That is in any industry, any place. And so this is felt by our Indian and Chinese and other people as well. It's not race dependent. It's not nationality dependent. Anybody can be having that feeling that I was more qualified for the job, somebody else got it. But that doesn't mean you come up and start saying that everybody has to be driven home, because then you are driving away the expert, you're driving away the ideas out of your country, which is going to create a scarcity of jobs anyway in your country. So this kind of educated arguments and discussions has to be taking place in mainstream. Unfortunately, all we hear is us versus them and colors and this and that. I believe our mainstream media needs to perhaps have more relevant, pertinent discussions in these issues, rather than just creating fear and scare in the hearts of the people, whether local or otherwise.
Hysteria. But hysteria sells, right? It gets you clickbait,
that's
it gets you clicks on your site, and people don't want a really introspective discussion. One thing that I wanted to ask is, are there any talks of, because this is not the first time something like this has happened, but specifically this targeted the IT community. Are there any talks, have you heard of Muslims in IT giving back to the community? So holding trainings, free workshops, how to apply for jobs, like just sort of that giving back and really showing, highlighting, the ethos of Islam.
Yeah, and absolutely, that's a very good question, actually. And this is where I think we all must come in, community-wise, and whether it is part of your religious center or anywhere else as well. I have heard efforts being mobilized with regards to advertising free trainings. There is a Dallas IT network there. People advertise that I'm here, I'm an expert at such and such. I've myself volunteered to train in Oracle-related technologies, and that's my field. And there are others who have volunteered to train in like Amazon, AWS, and other areas, which I know some of my colleagues and friends have volunteered to train as well. So those efforts are being mobilized. Also in the organization on the workplace level, we are reaching out to fresh graduates from college and otherwise, high school students as well, who wants to have, like, trying to find out what are they interested in and what would they like to learn, and then holding the trainings for them, and then seeing which, picking the cream of the lot to kind of participate in a summer camp with us and stuff. So yes, that's an effort that is ongoing, and I believe more needs to be done perhaps in this area. And I think not much can be done unless we see a demand for that, some people coming forward and telling us exactly how we can help, right? That's something which I believe needs that bridge needs to be built. And I guess there is a lot that can be done in terms of getting people up to scale in their skill set to then go out and be applying for different kind of jobs. And IT is such a vast field; it's an ocean out there. You can pick, like, any non-IT person. It does not have to be a master's degree or anything. They can actually learn a technology, go out there and get a job for themselves. And that's the beauty of this industry. And I believe a lot can be done to educate the people. I'm coming back to the same point. But perhaps that dialogue has to happen, and then an opportunity like that has to be given to them to come and learn from us. And like I said, I mean, it's not race or color dependent. It's basically for anyone who's looking out for a job, who's lost a job recently. I know so many people, so many friends and colleagues of mine who were doing well until the beginning of this year, who are now out of job, and who basically used to do traveling jobs, and now they don't have anything. They're just basically banking off of their savings. So the suffering suffering does not know color. I mean, everybody is on the same page there. And I believe we can definitely work together to find out solutions. So,
and what you were just saying about it making, I just heard of a Google program that replaces 4 years of college. Apparently, yes. $300. You get training, and you can. So this would be perhaps something that the Dallas community could do, is fundraise and give scholarships for that program. Here, do this program for $300, and you can get a job in that industry. So really, and I know Faizan, you have experience really putting these campaigns out that put the Muslim community in the forefront. You've done it in not Flint, but hold on,
St. Louis.
St. Louis, yes. Share some of your campaigns that have really worked in sort of turning the narrative about Muslims in that region around.
Well, yeah, first I want to thank Asif for his insight. I think that's very powerful to do trainings for IT professionals in order to really, build those inroads in the community and make sure you're giving back. I think as a community, there's a lot of opportunity we have to give back. There are free clinics that are run by the Muslim community. There are food pantries that are run by the Muslim community that help everybody, regardless of your faith, religion, and background. I think a lot more of that needs to be done. Some of the campaigns that we've done over the years are around these fields of trying to give back to those who are the most vulnerable in our community, whether they're the unhoused population or whether it's people seeking medical attention and just can't afford it because our healthcare system really benefits those who can afford it while disparages those who are unable to. So I think these are some areas that we can participate in. But with that said, I also want to caution the notion that as Muslims, it is totally our duty to change the mindsets of the people. And the reason I want to challenge that is that what's wrong is wrong. The person who wrote this letter, even if he's ignorant, even if he's arrogant, whatever it is, what he did was completely wrong, and nobody has to change that person's mind. Rather, we have to live in a country where Muslims are doing what we do as a faith tradition, which is giving back, honoring the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ, and helping those who are less fortunate, but also remembering that we are fully American, that we have worked hard, that our parents have sacrificed so we can have the opportunity that we have. And there are some people in this nation and around the world who don't care about any of that, who don't want a dialogue, and they just want to put you down so they can benefit themselves or they can feel better about themselves. And this is something we have to understand. America was built by Black people, but still not for Black people. Chinese people who have been in America for hundreds of years, who helped build the railroad, still don't get any recognition for that. The Irish, when they came here, they were told need not apply, and they were given second-rate jobs and cleaning jobs as if they're second class. So again, in this country, we have a tradition of people who are immigrants to this country, working hard, sacrificing, and still being treated as second-class citizens, still being not recognized for their work or their contribution. And this is something that continues to this very day. The last point that I'll mention is, unfortunately, even in professional fields, even in IT fields and others, getting a job is not that challenging. Being promoted in that job, especially to be a manager, there have been studies shown that if you're Indian or if you're Chinese, then you're rated poorly on things like leadership or things of this nature. So you might be able to get a job, you might be able to become a project lead, but to actually become a manager or a boss in a lot of IT companies still remains elusive for a lot of immigrants as well. So this is something for us to also keep in mind, that these challenges aren't just a challenge of doing more, giving dawah, being good, but also there's systematic racism and issues in our society that can only be addressed by tackling it head on.
Thank you for that insight. Asif, I wanted to ask you, how long have you been living in the Dallas community?
In Dallas, I've been here since 6 years now.
6 years now.
Alhamdulillah.
So have you seen, in your time there, have you seen the way mosques were protested against? There were armed protests against many of the mosques there. Were you here during those times? And
yes.
if you were, I just wanted to hear and have our audience here. This is going to be broadcast around the country. What were some of the lessons that you guys learned from that experience? What does it feel like to have your place of worship, your sanctuary, be, attacked by people who are, they're Americans yourself, they're citizens, they're part of your community, by community members. They live there, they worship, they worship maybe a couple of churches down from y'all. So what does that feel like?
Yeah, so my experience was that, yes, there were some fringe elements who thought to take it upon themselves to show up at the mosques with some guns in their hands. Not too many of them. And I was pleasantly surprised by the rest of the community, which was completely supportive of the locals who were just going out there to worship. And eventually, it pretty much phased out because, we as Muslims, and I'm so proud of our Muslim brothers that they actually tried to have a discussion with them rather than just get into a shell and try to get into a conflict. And really, that's the whole discussion I wanted to bring on the table today, is that the dialogue that happened even in that situation, which was, to be quite honest, it was pretty hostile in the sense of somebody standing with a gun outside your mosque doors where you're just going out to worship with your kids, by the way, and then you're coming out and see that somebody is out there to perhaps just show that they are there. They can get you anytime. They can pull that trigger and kill you, perhaps, and you don't know what's going on in somebody's mind. But my experience through that whole process was that these people seem to have some very wrong ideas about Islam, about Muslims as such. That we are here to, just take things from them, just to rob them of their livelihood, or rob them of their lifestyle. But when we discussed and we shared our stories with them, there was one guy who, we were typically speaking with, and he was pleasantly surprised to see so many things that we had to say that he completely changed his mind at the end of it. And we had tea and biscuit together at the end of it. So what I was going to say is, these kind of knee-jerk reactions that come out of a political thought process, out of somebody who's been brainwashed into thinking something which is completely unrelated, can only be solved through reach outs and through these programs that we are continuing to do. And perhaps we must mobilize more to do more and reach out to these people and change mindsets, that we are not here to rob them off of things, because that's something which, and I'm not saying as a person of as an apologetic person, I'm not apologizing for being a Muslim. I don't feel like I should apologize for anything. But yes, I should perhaps apologize for one thing, is that maybe I personally could have done more. Maybe I personally could have reached out to more people around me to let them know that I'm here to help. I'm here to give. And perhaps when I'm in need, you will give back to me. That's what American values were built off of. That's how this country was founded, where anybody from anywhere could come and, realize their American dream. Perhaps that's what they say. But I'm saying that as Muslims, we must send that message clear. I guess as far as I'm concerned, I should perhaps apologize that perhaps I didn't do much. To whoever reached that kind of a conclusion, that they are out there now to say that they don't even care about our little children, playing in pools and playgrounds and coming out and shooting at them. It's sad to see that, to say the least, and perhaps we must do more. And so my experience, as to your point about the whole incident of people coming out at the entrance of mosques with guns and trying to terrorize us, was that initially it was scary. It was threatening, to say the least. Some people were terrorized for sure. But as the time progressed and as we started to speak, it just fizzed out. And those same people will never be at the same at any of the religious places, bearing guns. That much I can say was the final conclusion of that event. So dialogue has a lot of power. Yeah.
Would you
I
arm?
go for it, Hannah.
Yeah, I wanted to know. Would you arm yourself? You live in an open carry state. Would you arm yourself?
I would. I was not thinking about it up until last year. Meaning, at this time, I believe as a self-defense mechanism, I would make sure that I arm myself with things that can help defend my family. But this is only for defensive purposes.
Okay. Yes, Faizan, you wanted to make a comment.
Oh, I was just going to add on to what Brother Asif said. In the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us to repel evil with that which is better, and you'll find the one who's hostile to you will become like a close friend. And I think we saw that happening, especially in front of IANT Masjid, when those armed protesters came. Another example I can give is in St. Louis in 2016, when then candidate Trump was running for office. He held a big rally in St. Louis, Missouri. Myself and other Muslims, we actually went there and passed out donuts, over 1,000 donuts to those people who came there. And you can find this, is called Muslims Wielding Donuts. And subhanAllah is amazing, because when we got there, believe it or not, this was the scene. On one side, you had anti-fascist protesters. In the middle, you had a line of police. On the other side, you had people yelling USA. One of these people came, got an American flag, threw it on the ground, stepped on it. So people were going crazy, and they were about to fight. And that's when we showed up about 7 or 8 Muslims with donuts. So we went around that and went right to the side of where people are yelling USA, getting ready to fight, and we started passing out donuts. And you could immediately see people go from angry to just really confused to then, we were putting donuts in their hands, not letting them take it from their hands, and it just diffused the whole situation. And alhamdulillah, this got a lot of positive coverage because of how strange it was for people to do something like this. I think in America, with social media and whatnot, we've developed echo chambers and we've developed small groups of people that kind of all believe the same thing. And you really are taught that there are other people who hate you and don't care what you care about. And that's true in some cases. However, a lot of it, as Brother Asif mentioned, is we can also do more. And the more you do to reach out to those people, especially those who have different opinions than you, you'll be surprised at how readily they are to change their attitude. One other example I can give is in Missouri was the only state that did not pass anti-Sharia legislation. So if you look at a map, all the other states in the Midwest and much of the country passed anti-Sharia legislation, but it didn't pass in Missouri. One of those years, the man who introduced that legislation, he went out on YouTube and said that Islam is trying to take over America and we have to stop the Islamization of America. Now, mostly when you hear about this person, you think this guy's cuckoo and crazy, and he's a lost cause. Myself and one other person drove to Jefferson City and met with this guy for 15 minutes. And we changed the conversation about anti-Sharia to be about safety. And that same day, after me, within an hour, that man who introduced the legislation took the legislation off of the floor. Again, if we did not meet him, if we did not try to give dawah and talk to him, that would not have happened. I think as a community, we have to be bold and courageous and try to really meet those people who hold these different opinions while also being firm on our faith and our tradition and not apologizing. As Asif had mentioned, we're not here to apologize, but we are here to reflect the values of our tradition.
So okay, so I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. If that is the case, how do you fight white nationalism that is rising across the country? You saw even, at courthouses, city councils, governor houses across the country. We saw armed groups of people who came and protested against their governors, and there were large amount of people. And obviously they weren't taken down by the police. Nothing happened to them. Whereas these other protests are being policed with a really, really heavy hand. Keeping that in mind, keeping the atmosphere of the country in mind, that there are white nationalists ready, trained, armed across the country, and who are fired up. So, and at that time, having tea and biscuits with them doesn't sound like the right strategy to a lot of people.
I agree 100%. Asif, go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say so obviously we see these people coming out and in numbers and display things which are definitely threatening, terrorizing, to say the least, right? What I was trying to say is in terms of, as a Muslim, what is our role in all of this is that, we claim to work for akhirah. We claim to work that we claim to say that we are here not to get the maximize our presence in this dunya, but to work and take this dunya as a tool to work for the akhirah, right? And most of the time, this whole the protesting and the fighting and the arguments and discussion is to get a chunk of this dunya as much as possible. And I'm trying to be a little philosophical here. Pardon me if I'm going too far, but I just wanted to make a mention of this: is that as Muslims, if they are giving us akhirah, in the sense that we can pray anywhere in the United States. This is such a blessed country. There's nowhere in the world that you can actually think about just praying anywhere that you want and nobody's going to trouble you. And this is something which which I feel proud about about this country, that we are still able to do that. And there's a safe environment ensured by the polity of this country, by the security of this country in terms of our day-to-day as of today. So if they are giving us the akhirah, we can give them the dunya, in the sense that if they want something from us, we can be ready to share, we can be ready to offer that to them, as long as there is a dialogue that is happening, there is a conversation that's happening. If anybody, I mean, this is across the board, anybody who thinks they can snatch things from anyone and then claim that they have achieved something or they have succeeded in doing something, it has to be a foolish ideology. There's nobody who can subscribe to this kind of a thought process. But yet we are seeing that all this noise around that we are seeing in places across the United States today, unfortunately, is for that reason. And as Muslims, I think we need to put things in perspective, that we are not here to take things from you. That's something which is, we must actually put it out there, that we are here to give. We are here to give you the akhirah. We are here to give you your success in the next life. We are not here to take and accumulate things, because ultimately I'm going to die, you're going to die, everybody's going to die. We're going to leave these things behind here. We're not going to be taking these things with us. So what's the point in fighting and killing each other and accumulating things which anyway are not going to support us, for the ultimate path that we're going to take after death? So that's where I think the perspective needs to change, perhaps. And then these people I've seen personally, like Brother Faizan also mentioned, is that when we come out with the approach that we are not here stiff and we don't want Sharia law in this country, and this because 80% of the American laws are Sharia compliant anyway. I mean, Sharia is about what? There shouldn't be robbing. There should be security of personal property. There should be security of personal dignity. All of these things is Sharia. I mean, we already have these laws in this country. What are we fighting about here? So the term Sharia has been misused in the media in such a bad way that as soon as the word is even mentioned, it seems like a devilish, a motive, and everybody starts to get scared that, okay, we don't want Sharia law in this country. Sharia is about well-being. It's about a society living in coherence with each other. And as an example, we know the societies that lived in this and under these laws previously, with all communities coming together. So I honestly believe there is no reason why anybody should even start screaming on the top of their lungs that we want Sharia law in this country or anything. This country is already Sharia compliant. 80% of the laws are already Sharia laws in any civilized society that you go. So I think as Muslims, we must put things in perspective. If I'm able to go to an airport in the morning and able to pray Fajr next to an escalator and then catch my flight with nobody troubling me, that's a blessing that I believe this country is able to give me, and then I'm willing to give the dunya back to them if they want the dunya from me, because they are giving me my akhirah for doing that. And that's what the Prophet ﷺ also mentioned, right? So as long as the leaders don't stop you from praying, do not revolt against them. Salah is one thing which the Prophet ﷺ said that is your measurement. If your leaders are allowing you to pray securely at any place in that society, then work with them, of course, but don't revolt, because they want you to become the best version of you anyway. And Salah is the way to get that. So anyways, the point I'm trying to make, and perhaps this is going too far, is that we must, as Muslims, try to come together, reach out to the people, let them know what we stand for, let them know what our values are, that we don't seek more and more of this dunya and robbing people of their rights and stuff. No, we are here to share, and as long as we are able to help, we will help, but we are not going to be scared and bogged down by these threatening messages that come across, because you cannot scare somebody who's already looking forward to the next life. That's something which they must understand. You cannot scare us, because if you kill us in this whole process, right, I'm going to be called a martyr, and Allah's going to take care of me anyway. So you'll be doing me a world of good if you do that anyway. So we are here to work with you. We are here to have a discussion. We are here to help if we can, and that's the dialogue we want to have. And then, to be honest with you, I personally feel that I should probably do more on that front. And this whole conversation is bringing a lot of thoughts in my mind in terms of what else can I do. And so thanks for that. I'll probably start doing that after this call.
Allah. Oh, you're muted.
I think you're muted, Sister Hina. Sister Hina, you're muted.
Okay. Yes, our show is very action-oriented. We'd like to stop. We'd like to end this hour with some sort of action. So one of the things that Faizan, as you wrap this up, could you tell us what's next? What are you expecting from law enforcement, and what should the community be doing next? Give them an action item to do now.
So with the specific case that happened in Dallas, we are still following up with leads of people who might receive these letters. If you receive this letter, if you know somebody received it, please contact law enforcement or contact CARE, and we will then help you in filing the complaint properly. Unfortunately, many immigrants, especially in our community, we might receive these things and just try to ignore it. Don't ignore it. We'll keep you anonymous, but this needs to be taken further. Beyond that, though, in general, living in America, we have to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, what? Do you think you'll say you believe and you won't be tested? For sure you'll be tested. Everything that's happened, whether it's in America or abroad, is nothing more than a reflection of Allah testing you. And He will test you by first making you wealthy, giving you an education, bringing you to a country where you have a lot of opportunities, and then seeing, are you going to be grateful and are you going to actually do anything with it other than enrich yourself, make sure your kids get educated, married, and beyond. Sadly, most American Muslims, we do not live up to these ideals and we are failing these tests. And I say that as a community activist and a leader, that we don't even know how to explain Islam to somebody. If I ask your audience, tell me what Islam is in 1 minute or less, most of your audience would not be able to explain that. Realize that we have to do a lot more. Voting is one example. If you have a job and you're working, find ways for your job to give back. Donate to causes at your masjid and even beyond. Make sure your children understand that they are fully American and that their future is in this country. Allow them to join social justice programs. Number 4, become educated on how to speak intelligently, how to use the laws and the rights you have in this country to defend yourself and your community. And do not have this defeatist, pessimistic mentality that many Muslims have. The greatest threat for our success is not the non-Muslims, not shaitan, not iblis, not whatever. It is looking at you right in the mirror. And that is your greatest challenge, is because we look at ourselves as a defeatist community, we respond accordingly. And unfortunately, we see this happen, that if you bring up a good cause, Muslims will respond by being pessimistic. What is their actual incentive, these things? But if you're corrupt and you're part of a corrupt institution, mashallah, tabarakallah, all government is corrupt and we accept that.
Mm-hmm.
The fight starts in the heart and at home. Thank you.
Thank you both so much for being here. And to our audience, you had a great opportunity to talk to two people from the Dallas community and hear it from them themselves. We are just a few action items from us at Justice for All. We have a call-in day for the Save India from Fascism project. Please call your congresspeople and senators today. Use the calling tool on our website. Otherwise, just call them from your regular phone and ask them to accept USERV's recommendations for India. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.